This is Social Justice Warrior Leadership Training, and I'm Reagan. I'm from Highlands Ranch High School, and I'm the moderator for today. This is Samantha Ju, and she's the creator of Platform. Our speaker for today is Hong. Welcome, Hong.
Hang.
Hey.
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't really hear Reagan. I had to turn up my volume to see if that would help.
Reagan, can you speak up a little bit more, and can you lower your camera so we can see you as well? Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
Okay.
All right. Hang, can you sort of introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Nguyen. I am the executive director for BPSOS Center for Community Advancement, the Orange County branch of Boat People SOS.
All right. And how long have you been the ED there?
5.5 years. In May was my 5th anniversary.
My God, have I known you that long?
No, we only met in like 2017.
But you weren't the ED then, were you?
I think I became ED right when I came back from Denver.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right. Reagan, can you start us off with the first question for Hang?
Yeah. So today we're talking about fears. What are some of your greatest fears in life?
Some of my greatest fears that in life that I'm feeling right now is the fear of dying and the fear of failing.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of people have some fears. What in your life circumstances make you fear them? Why is this awareness important?
Last year in August 2019, I was in a traffic accident on the freeway going from my office to another meeting on the other side of town, and um, I was rear-ended on the freeway, but the accident, the way it happened was that some car had stopped for something in the road, and I stopped behind it. Thank God in time, I didn't hit the car, but the car behind me um, hit me and pushed me into the front car. And with it happening on the freeway, um, a lot of cars were still like zooming by. So that caused a lot of anxiety in me. I wasn't injured, thank God, no one was really injured. Um, but for some reason, I mean, I've been in a number of accidents in my lifetime, but that accident gave me so much anxiety. Even until this day, I've been trying to get over it. Um, that every time I drive, I have this fear that I'm going to get hit, um, but mostly like dying in a car accident. Um, with that, and then for failing, the fear of failing is mostly with my job and my career. Um, I always want to do everything perfect, you know, everything the best. And with the pandemic, I feel the fear even stronger because of COVID. It's something I can't control. So a lot of the programs and projects under my leadership are not doing so well. Um, I try to remind myself that because the pandemic is out of my control, it's unknown to everyone, but that fear is still there. That I'm going to fail as a director. That why we aren't meeting deliverables. Why are we not getting grant proposals right now?
I'm curious, Hang. You named actually two very, I would say, common fears: failure and death. How has those two fears prevented you from doing the things that you normally would, or pursuing projects and goals that that you want to do, but there's that lingering fear? Like, how has it sort of disrupted your life?
I don't. take the freeways as much as I did before. I usually take the freeway everywhere, even from home to work, even though it's like 10 miles, which is really close. So I take Inside Street, which is like one street down, almost all the way, and then, have to make the left and right when I get closer to home. I haven't been able to visit friends and family that lives outside that 10-mile radius where I would have to take the freeway to get to them. I could take Inside Street, but God knows how long it would take me to get there. Um, when I do take the freeway, it's always has to be somebody else in the car with me, preferably an adult. Um, if I do go on the freeway for whatever reason and I have like my niece or nephew, which are younger, I kind of hold my breath until I exit the freeway. The extra fear of like them being in the car as well. Um, because of that, I haven't, that disrupted my life where I couldn't visit friends and family. But even with the pandemic, where we are told to stay home, which kind of made it easier because you're not supposed to be outside anyways. But I think as time went on, I needed to see some friends and family, just to know that they're okay, to kind of visit and stuff, and we be safe as well. But I haven't seen my other nephew. I mean, I think once or twice during this whole time, and he's my godson. I haven't spent much time with him. So, and for projects, it's the hesitation of applying for new funding opportunities. It's like, well, we've got rejected already. Can we do more work in this time? What can we propose in our work? We have to adjust our work because everything's virtual now.
Yeah. Do you think that being in quarantine during a pandemic wanted wanted to face your fears, or kind of made you more fearful of it and kind of helped? Not.
It actually did both. It's been a tug of war of the time to reflect on everything that's going on. It makes me appreciate life a lot more. Um, but also the unknown, like will we ever get out of this pandemic, and if we do get out of it, will it ever go back to normal? um, I've never had the fear of dying. It was something I've always accepted that everyone has like an end time, but for some reason that accident like put the fear of dying in me like stronger than I ever felt before, you know and I do reflect a lot right now because last year my dog had passed away right before that, and then my good friend, her mother passed away, and then my nephew's grandpa on his father's side passed away. So there was a lot of stuff surrounding that, and I think I blocked it off and ignored it, kind of like, oh, I don't have time to grieve, I don't have time to deal with this now. Like, let me get past the year, and maybe 2020 would be better. But when the year started, it was pretty good. I had goals and things to be like, what, like, hey, 2020 is going to be your year. Start off with a bang. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. But then when March rolled around, the pandemic hit, and it's kind of like, oh, now what?
I want to come to this notion of control. The topic is it's confronting your fears and control redefined. You avoiding the highways is you controlling your life. You avoiding writing these proposals is controlling the level or the number of rejection. So you try less, you dare less, right? So one of the things I've noticed in the ways people try to control their circumstances is they worry about it. So by worrying about it, they feel like they're going to be in control of the situation, or they want to perfect it. So they will not turn in like a grant proposal until like forever, forever, forever. Even the night before, they will not finish it because it's not to the standard that they believe. Because if they don't do it right, they don't think they'll be able to excel or be successful. And then I've had people who try to make their lives busy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people from the moment they wake up to the moment they put their head down at 2 like in the morning, they like check their email like 10,000 times, or they reach out to people, and it's like constant busyness, OCD, obsessive compulsive behavior, thinking if I think about it long enough, if I write about it long enough, if I avoid this, if I do that or don't do that, I can control my life so I will not die. I will control my life so I will not fail. I will control my life so I will not be rejected, on and on and on. How can that make you effective if you're controlled by fear? Hey.
It's not effective. I live with anxiety every day, and depending on what happens in that day is how strong the anxiety is. Um, I mean, when I reflect on it, I know it's controlling me on certain days, and I try to, reflect and think about like, I have a control on how I drive, but do I really have a control on how other people drive? And I don't, and it's something I always ask myself from the day of the accident until now is like, you've been in accidents before where you've been hit, where you hit somebody else, but it never bothered you. It was an accident, and you move on. And it's like, I try to reflect where like, what is the root cause of this? Where is it really the accident that is causing this fear, or is it something else that, underlying there where I'm trying to figure that out every day, thinking about I've never had a problem driving, like people know I love driving. Every time we go somewhere, road trips or like anywhere, it's always me volunteer to drive. So I know now that there's something behind it and I'm trying to figure out what it is. And I think trying to find that root problem and acknowledging it would help me move forward. Because before I didn't tell anybody that I had a fear of driving. I kind of went around it. Um, but I've learned through, I guess, my staff was like, hey, you need to be more open. Don't be afraid to tell people what you're feeling. And that was something that was another fear was like, how honest can I be? Will people make fun of me? Will people expect that I have this fear, or would they be kind of um, insensitive and be like, oh gosh, Hank, it's almost been a year. It's been a year. Can't you get over it by now? In a sense.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Reagan. I want you to think about this. What are you afraid of? And I want you to sort of see what Hang is talking about, because I think one of the patterns I've noticed in people is the more powerless you felt as a child, the more you need to be in control of your circumstances. The more OCD, more anxious, more worried. Like my mom, I would pray 5 hours a day, and I thought it's because she was more spiritual than other people. But because she felt so powerless as a child, she want or needed to make sure that everything turned out exactly the way she wanted. So she prayed for her agenda every day.
Yeah.
And the harder she grabbed onto, the more she was fearful of how things would play out. And inevitably, life never plays out the way you intended. And so therefore, all the more she would grab on. Reagan, can you sort of chime in terms of your fears? Because I'm curious what you guys fear the most.
I would say that one of my fears, because I am in high school, is not getting good enough grades or not
Yes.
doing well on a project. Um, because that could determine which school I go to. And the more you think about it, I think it makes you more fearful.
Yeah, grades is a huge thing because it's like if you get good grades, it's like the SAT, and then it's about college. And if you don't get into the good college, you think you won't get a good job. If you don't get a good job, how am I gonna, pay for anything? So there's like this domino effect. This step will affect other steps. The question is, how do we overcome it? Because it's real. Because I've written about this. Fear is real. You
Yeah.
will die, and there's a fear element to it. You will fail. Uh, you will be rejected. Trust me when I say that, because personally and professionally, I've been rejected too many times. So, how does this? What can we do to prevent you from being paralyzed by it?
I think that there's also a good type of fear, and then there's the unhealthy fear, where um, a good type of fear is sometimes it helps you push yourself a little more than you might if you weren't fearful of it, or it helps you decide what's right from wrong as well.
Well, yeah, there is that. Biologically speaking, humans are wired to fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
So if I sense danger, I'm most likely to run down that alley instead of, walk. So that is a healthy fear.
Yeah.
But what's difficult is how do you differentiate between healthy fear and illogical fear, like hang on the highway? Is that she lives in the Southern California, so I think that's a healthy fear.
No, it's
But most people would say it's illogical fear because it's preventing you from meeting people, from being socially engaged with your family. So it's illogical fear because it's paralyzing you from actually doing the things that you enjoy. But let's say I have a question. If I know and I accept that I will die, that I will fail at some point, and that I will be rejected, how would that transform the way you approach fear? If I know I'm going to die at some point, will I not step into that highway? If I know that in my lifetime I will fail, would I be worried about exams all the time because I know at some point, one of those exams I will fail? Would that help or will that not really help at all? I'm curious.
I think it would help, but it would take some time. Um, I think for me, admitting that those are my fears, but also saying it out loud without worrying about people's judgment
Mm,
helps me. Um, I usually don't talk. I guess being in a Vietnamese family, very traditional, we weren't really raised to be vocal or to say how we're feeling. Um, and I think I finally realized that among my cousins who I'm really close to, where it's like, have I really told them about my mental health and how I've been feeling through different experiences? And one of my staff members, she goes to therapy, so she, gets these therapy sessions and advice. And I would talk to her about things I'm going through. She's like, "Why can't you be open to your cousins? If you guys are so close, why do you expect that they would judge you?" And I kind of thought about it. I was like, well, that's okay. Like, I never tried it, so let me try it. So then I told them, like, I'm having a rough time with driving. Like, it's caused me, like, not to take the freeway. I would tell them I can't, like, I'm not going to come visit you because I'm afraid to take the freeway. And they were very accepting of it, which I guess to my surprise, was like, oh, it can be sensitive. I guess when we talk, we always talk in fun. We make jokes and stuff like that. Even with the pandemic, we make these jokes about fear and people staying home and no one wants to go out and stuff like that. But I forget that there's this side of them where we grew up together. You know, why did I assume that they were going to be insensitive to what I'm going to tell them, especially something that is so, I guess, very, what's the word for it? I can't think of the word, but something like so personal that I couldn't even share with my family because I've never been taught that or raised that way. So when I finally opened up to them, it made me feel a lot better. Where it's like it's okay, Hang, that you can tell them that you're not doing good, you know. And I got a lot of support, a lot of advice, and them helping me getting through it. Like, okay, then I'll drive, or we'll come to you if you don't want to come to us. We'll come visit you, or we'll meet halfway. We'll meet at this person's house because it's closer, you know. And or take the inside street. Like I'll tell you what directions to take and like what streets to take and stuff like that. It just felt more comforting that I was able to like say it out loud to them and kind of get that level of support that I assumed that I wouldn't get from them.
You know what's interesting for me in this conversation is the extent to which we think being afraid is a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm afraid of public speaking. And I know that every time I speak publicly, I'm going to have a pit in my stomach. I'm going to feel like crappy the before. I'm going to be using the bathroom right before, you know what I mean? And afterwards, I'm going to be purely physically exhausted. If I know that, if I know that everyone feels that while they do public speaking, I accepted that it's part of me speaking publicly. It's part of the experience. Me writing the grant proposal, 99% that I will get rejected is part of the process. Me taking that exam, Reagan, means there's a chance I will fail. And I have failed exams. But it's the part of it that is the troubling part is we are not worried so much about our standards. There's part of that, but we're also mostly worried about what other people might think about us. If I get that D, if I get that grant proposal rejected as an ED, well, what does that say about me as the ED? What does that say about me as a student? It seems like we're less of a person because of it. But if I know that Hank got like 5 things rejected and 100% my grant proposals rejected, does it, by being more human, how does that change our perception of what we do? Does that make sense, Reagan?
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't think anybody has ever done this, but for my new team that I have, I ask for help. I include the program manager and my coordinators on the proposal process. So instead of me writing the proposals myself, I have my team that helps me write it. And I think involving them into the process and somewhat takes some of the stress off, that they can see firsthand how much work and commitment it takes to crank out a proposal. And with them understanding the process and what the leadership team goes through to get these proposals, because it's funding, it's our salary, it's how to maintain our office and everything, they appreciate that I involve them. But not a lot of organization involves their staff on these proposals.
And you're right, Hang. That's letting go.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you redefine what control is. If I need to do everything, you know those, Ray, have you met those people who feel like they have to do everything and anything and they have to oversee it?
Yeah.
So that, because if they let it out of their control, it'll be chaos. You're bringing chaos. Well, no, you're not bringing in chaos. You're actually letting go of that need to be in full control of the situation. The fact of the matter is, I think you guys all know this, but I don't think you've lived it, is that we actually don't have that much control over life. We really don't. And one of the things that I like to emphasize more than anything is through this process is what is beyond our control, what is something that we can't change, meaning we will die, right? What we can change is how we die. For instance, what do I mean by this? If I'm a young Black man, I'm going to be afraid that if I'm stopped by a car, that I could potentially get hurt or die in the situation, given the political climate. Yes, we are all die. So let's say we accept the fact that we die. But we can, that's the part, like, does that young man have to die under the hand of the policeman? That can be changed. Remember Angela Davis is like, certain things, it's like, people say, what's that serenity prayer they say? What is that serenity prayer? That there are things in life. Do you guys know that prayer? I can't remember on top of my head because I've been in Zoom meetings all day. So the serenity prayer says this: grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, which is I will die, right? Courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Angela Davis comes and says, there are certain things I cannot accept, so therefore I must change. So what we need to figure out is, first and foremost, is it illogical fear or is it real fear? If it's illogical fear, then we need to get behind it, like Kane was talking about. Why am I afraid? What is at the root of this fear, and why is it occurring right now in my life? And if she could transform the way she thinks, but more importantly, can she transform the system that created that fear within her? If I'm afraid of a policeman, I need to figure out, is it illogical fear? It is real fear. If it's real fear, is it something that we can transform? Is it something that I can change, or is it something that I need to accept? And this is the difficult part, because there's a million fears in our lives. We have to be able to categorize them. And once we categorize them, we have to figure out what we can do to work with it. There's no one answer for any one particular, and all fears. There's just no one answer. But to be an effective leader, you have to be able to sort of break it down. Am I trying to control my fear because I want to control my circumstances to get the results that I want, which is what? Not doable, right?
Yeah.
Am I so possessed by this fear that I cannot sleep because tomorrow I have an exam, even though I have already studied 2 weeks for it? Or is that fear real, and can we go about transforming society in a way that it will improve the lives, not only for me, but for others like me? And that's what we need to dissect. Because one of the things I want us to understand is this need to control, we got to get rid of, because it's not helpful. We got to figure out a better response to these fears based upon how we categorize them.
I was gonna say that as a leader, you have to be able to be a follower. Is my student senate teacher always tells us to be a good leader, you have to be able to be a follower. You have to listen to the others around you, and you have to let them help you. Um, you have to break down what your needs are, and you have to talk to people. You have to advocate for yourself in some ways if that's what you need to let go or
It's letting go of that control because you're afraid to be seen as ineffective,
mhm,
as unqualified. It's all playing on all your insecurities. And as women, I think it's even more prominent because we, for some reason, feel like we need to become a strong male type, the silent one who keeps everything within and has full control of the situation. Well, by golly, I mean, those guys don't have any control of the situation. They're just not expressive. Women, for some reason, have so many insecurities of how they're perceived by others that they need to make sure that everything is done in a certain way that has certain results so that no one will question their leadership. But the fact of it is, most of us come into our jobs not having the complete breadth of experience that will help us lead the organization, lead the people. And so the question now is this: are you going to be imprisoned by the need to be perceived well? Or are you going to break out of this prison and have a new model of leadership?
A new model. What I've learned in the last year is when I talk to other EDs in my position is to be honest about how you're feeling. I think sometimes it is hard, especially for a woman, to tell another person, an ED, I think I'm failing. I don't think I can do this anymore. This is not for me. And just being open about it, you receive the support that you didn't think you'll get. And especially I'm pretty young for this position, and a lot of EDs, they're a little bit older than me, so they have more experience, and they're like, oh, don't worry, Hang, like I've been through that. It will pass. You're doing the best you can, and that's all you can do. Being ED, you do wear many hats, and it's mostly men that's in this position. And for people that never met me, a lot of the emails and mail I get is always Mr. Hang Nguyen, which is kind of interesting because Hang in Vietnamese, it's always a female name. And I was like, they don't know. It's a cultural thing. Like, it's okay. But when I received an email from somebody that was Vietnamese, then it kind of confirmed, oh, it is everyone, like almost everyone's like thought like this position is for a male. Um, but to let go is something that you are right, Sam, that we have to learn to do. I've been wearing so many hats here at this organization for the last 5 years, and it was getting stressful. When I talked to my sister branches, and I never talked to them before, which is weird because we're one organization. So when I talked to them during the pandemic and how they're doing and whatnot, I found out that, so I take care of the budgets and financials here. I found out from my sister branches, it's not the ED that does it. It's either their branch manager or someone else on staff. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't think that was allowed in a sense where I was like, why am I doing this? So I'm handling like, because we are one organization, our accounting and our human resource is at our headquarters, which is in Virginia. So everything has to go upstream. So I was like, okay, everyone has help. I finally hired an office assistant, but she was helping on the projects more. And I was like, wait a second. My goal for the office assistant was to help me. And I never asked her for help since I hired her. So I'm like, what am I doing? So that was one of my fear, was like giving up the control, like assigning her the task that I had envisioned at the beginning when I hired her, was like, I want this office assistant to help me with the budget and financials. And then when someone like pointed that out to me, they're like, hey, you hired the office assistant so they could help you, but you never asked for help. I was like, oh, you're right. So then I met with the office assistant. I'm like, this is what I want you to help me with. And I trained her. And I'm not good at math, so I tried my best, but being honest with her was like, I'm not good at accounting or financial. I have no background. She was very open to that. And we became a team together where it's like, we're going to learn this together. The mistakes I've made, something, and also to kind of move forward in a new direction where we'll do the system a little bit differently. And she was like, oh, okay, hey, like, yeah, let's work together. Like, and I got no judgment from her because there was that fear of like, I'm an ED, like, why am I telling a new hire, an office assistant, that I can't do this? It's never been my strong suit. And I got past that and I told her, and she was like, oh, okay, like, well, we'll learn together. Thanks for teaching me. And I felt kind of like, oh, it was a breath of fresh air, kind of being honest about my weakness to my staff, but then also asking for help as well. And I feel so much better because now that's one task off my table. And it took me, let's see, 7 months to finally hand it off. Yeah. Because I just felt with my team was like they needed more help on their projects, but that wasn't helping me because then if I get tied up doing financial and budget, I don't have time to write proposals. So, my goal this year was to like hand off tasks, but then with the pandemic hit, I felt like we froze in time. We didn't move forward. We didn't go backwards. We're just stuck like on March 17th. So it's funny because some of the calendars in my office is still stuck on March 17th, the day we started working from home.
Any final comments from Hang or what, Reagan? I want to point out a couple of things that I would like you guys to think about this upcoming week. Hang, Reagan, do you have any final thoughts?
I have a question for Hang. Do you think society creates this almost fear? It creates a fear of telling people about your fears, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
I think society does create that where we keep our weaknesses and our fears to ourselves. That if it was to be um, talked about out loud, that people would judge us. And for me personally, I feel like because of that, in the past, I felt like that was more damaging than the fears itself. Was having somebody judge me, and then just like, oh, like my mistake, like I go back in my little hole and was like, I knew I shouldn't have said it, but I think because I've spoken out loud and I've gotten great support, I have overcome that where I'm not going to let society put this fear in me. Where I am a woman, there's a lot of women executive directors out there that are doing so well. And it's something that I look forward to where like in 10, 20 years, that's where I want to be. And I look at them and was like, do they really fear anything? But of course they have. They're human. They have to have felt what I felt at my age to get where they're at. And I think that's something that we just have to, in a sense, accept it, but don't let it control it. Acknowledge it. If you want, find the root of it and then move forward.
A couple of things I want you to think about. I want you to, first and foremost, think about the different ways in which you control or you control your life. Whether it be avoidance, if it means busyness, perfection. We're talking about people who becomes OCD, who spend all their time worrying about it. I want you to let go. And this is so important. The idea that you can determine as a human being the outcome. So if you're not outcome oriented, if you're not control oriented, then I wonder how we approach our problems, our fears. If I cannot control when I die, right? But I accept the fact I will die, then the question becomes like, I'm not saying you should hit the highway and just go 100 miles an hour. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we have to be responsible in terms of how we do things, but we also need to understand that we're not in mastery of what happens to us, what happens to that proposal, what happens to that test. The second thing is the very things that we are afraid of. I want us to be able to categorize it: illogical, real, healthy. If I understand it to be real, you have to figure out, is it something that can be changed or not changed? Is it something systemic, or is it just a personal thing? I want us to be able to name it, to understand it, and to get behind it. Not to control it, but to be able to confront it in a healthy way. Because I think what we're going to be talking about there creatively is, once we cannot go one step forward because we are bound by that fear. It's like, how do we go from fear and to be daring and to be courageous? Like, I'm afraid of coming out to my family, let us say. That is real. They do have rejection. They have people kicking them out of the family. But the question is this: how do I get from this fear, overcoming it, and to be strong enough to own it and to do it? And not be so worried about how it will end up, to be in control of it. If I say it this way, if my family circumstances change, if my financials, you know what I mean? We play with all these if clauses to make the perfect setting for what we will do to confront our fears. It ain't gonna happen. So those are the things I want you to think about. First part is the control issue. The second part is break down that fear and get behind it. Because that is what will make us effective, because it's the only way we'll be able to get to the second level. All right. Thank you, ladies. We're going to end this session with this comment, and then we'll be, next week, we'll be talking about daring creatively. Thank you.
Thank you, Hank, for your time.
Thank you, Reagan.